Well, China continues to assert its power and influence in the Pacific, and the tiny island of Taiwan is in Beijing's crosshairs. China's president has ordered his military to be ready to invade by 2027. And President Biden has vowed to send U.S. military forces to help the island defend itself. Well, George Thomas brings us the story from Taipei, Taiwan.
Last August, the Chinese military sent a loud wake-up call to the United States and allies in the region with this massive, unprecedented drill simulating a blockade of Taiwan.
It crossed a multi-threshold that did not happen for decades.
176 warplanes, 41 Navy ships, and dozens of attack and reconnaissance drones choked off Taiwan's waters and airspace for 72 hours. 11 ballistic missiles also landed in the waters around the island. Dr. Alexander Huang is a leading Taiwan-China military specialist.
China gave, one spoon of different dishes to Taiwan, and we got the taste already. If they put out the full plate, the whole table, we probably will have a big problem.
And military activities near the island haven't stopped. A record 1,727 Chinese fighter planes crossed into Taiwan's air defense zone in 2022, compared to 960 incursions in 2021 and 380 in 2020. 2023 has been no different.
The Chinese outward expansionism of influence and presence is scaring and destabilizing an entire, region.
Experts say while Taiwan has a well-equipped military with modern weapon systems, including fighter jets, tanks, and surface-to-air missiles, it lacks the range of capabilities to defend itself against China.
Yes, there's 110 miles of water between China and the main island of Taiwan. And yes, Taiwan is mountainous and is a perfect place for defenders, but Taiwan has not invested in its defense. And part of that is because Taiwan's generals and admirals have bought the wrong equipment over the course of decades.
In January, a Washington-based think tank simulated a war game of China invading Taiwan in 2026. In 24 different scenarios, the Center for Strategic and International Studies said Taiwan could likely fend off a Chinese invasion only if the United States came to the island's defense. If not, Taiwan would fall in 3 months. President Biden has repeatedly vowed to defend Taiwan in case it's attacked.
To be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes.
U.S.-Taiwan relations have really come out of the shadows in a lot of ways. I think European countries, Japan and others, are going to be focused on this and supportive of Taiwan's right to defend itself.
War games show, however, any victory over the Chinese would come at a great cost.
In 4 weeks of fighting, the United States typically lost hundreds of aircraft, 2 aircraft carriers, and up to 24 other ships.
More than 3,000 American soldiers would lose their lives in the simulation. And China would also suffer significant losses. CSIS says the simulation shows 90% of China's amphibious fleet decimated, more than 100 warships destroyed, and tens of thousands of its soldiers killed, wounded, or captured. Still, from Washington to London to here in Taiwan's capital, Taipei, one thing is clear.
It's not a matter of if they will invade, it's when. It's a matter of the when they will invade.
Were you surprised? Admiral Lee Si-ming, former head of Taiwan's armed forces, tells CBN News why China's president is so determined to take Taiwan.
You firmly believe that Xi Jinping truly believes that it is his destiny, it is his calling to reunite Taiwan?
I believe so, because he has already said this. The Deng Xiaoping said this. We have the patience. We can wait even for 100 years. But Xi Jinping didn't say so. He said that we just cannot delay the unification of Taiwan. We need to accomplish it in our generation.
A sentiment that runs deep in Chinese society.
And that's why it's not just a communism thing. It really is, in Chinese eyes, a patriotism and nationalism thing.
President Xi has ordered his military, known as the People's Liberation Army, to be ready to take Taiwan by 2027, which marks the force's 100th anniversary. But could that be a smokescreen? U.S. Air Force General Mike Minihan told his staff in a memo to prepare for the U.S. going to war with China over Taiwan in 2 years. I hope I am wrong. My gut tells me we will fight in 2025. Minihan, who oversees transport and refueling for the Air Force, wrote last month. Meanwhile, Rear Admiral Michael Stutman, commander of the Office of Naval Intelligence, warns that Xi's rapid military modernization, coupled with an ambition to be the world's strongest political figure, makes China today the #1 challenge of the 21st century.
History tells us that a Messianic leader with centralized control in charge of a totalitarian society with grievances, with a lot of hard power at their disposal, with an ambition to change the international system to their preferences, that you put that combo together, and that represents one of the most dangerous trends in geopolitics.
The U.S. is now deploying additional troops to Taiwan, increasing funding for existing Pacific military operations, and recently inked a deal with the UK and Australia to build next-generation submarines in a bid to counter China's threat. Still, it's doing little to deter Beijing. George Thomas, CBN News, Taipei, Taiwan.
Well, this is a long-standing dispute. On the mainland, they view Taiwan as a rogue province. They view it as literally a mandate of heaven that they are to control Taiwan, control Tibet, control the Silk Road. All of these things are part of the national consciousness. But in the history of China, and you don't have to go back too far, just go back to 1912 and Sun Yat-sen, there was this great promise of democracy in China. The initial republic of 1912 had great promise for that, but then it broke apart, and there was a series of warlords who came up, and from that, a horrible civil war and the invasion of the Japanese. They took advantage of what was going on, the internal division within China, the horrors that happened in Nanjing, all of these things. And then that civil war continued after World War II. And there were two main players, Mao and Chiang Kai-shek. Well, Chiang Kai-shek lost, and he evacuated his troops to Taiwan and created a democracy there that has absolutely flourished. They're one of the leading economies in the world. And they actually showed China what could happen if you get liberal economic policies. But that dream of being the Middle Kingdom, that dream of territorial sovereignty over a rogue province, is absolutely in the national consciousness, and they want this. So what do we do to support a democracy? We've been traditional allies of Taiwan since World War II. How do we respond? Are we going to respond with force? Well, our president has now committed us to do that, and there's now an ongoing treaty with Japan to stage military troops on Japanese islands in order to respond to an invasion from China to Taiwan. These are interesting times that we live in, and when a president of a sovereign nation says, prepare for war, and he tells that to his military, we should all wake up. And we should also wake up to it's our internal divisions, our internal politics that are encouraging this kind of behavior. And whether it's the invasion of Ukraine or a potential invasion of Taiwan, if they perceive that we're weak politically, that we don't have the political will to stand by democracy, stand by the freedoms that we hold so dearly, well, they will absolutely take advantage of it. And we're seeing it across the world stage today.